everyone, welcome to another episode of Indoor Recess. My name is Justin Smirlies, a digital producer at the Toronto Star, and I'm joined by Kevin McGran, the hockey reporter at the Star. How's it going, Kevin?
Well, my June has opened up. I'll have a little bit more free time. That's how it's going. I'm wondering how
Yeah,
to spend it. Right, the weather looks good, so I've got a kayak. So maybe I'll go off and enjoy the summer like everybody else.
yeah, stress-free maybe perhaps. If you, in case you've been sleeping under a rock and you're watching this, yes, we're talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Game 7 loss to the Montreal Canadiens on Monday night. You've been how long have you been following this team, Kevin?
I've been sort of the main guy on them since 2006, I think, when since
Okay.
Paul Maurice was coach of the Maple Leafs.
Okay, so right at the beginning of pain for a lot of Leafs fans. Have you seen anything like this? What is your first take after last night's 3-1?
Well, first off, doesn't surprise me at all that they lost in Game 7. They're terrible in Game 7s. But it does surprise me that they lost this playoff series. Like, I really thought they were going to take it in 5. I knew if it got to Game 6 that the fans in the stands might have an effect and that we'd be coming back for Game 7. So if they didn't get it in 5, it wasn't looking good. And they didn't look good in 5, 6, or 7. Have you seen anything like this? The only thing that you can talk about 2013 when they were up 4-1 halfway through the third period or whatever. What actually it reminds me of is 2014. Now that year, they were third place in the Eastern Conference with 14 games to go. They had like a 96% chance of making the playoffs. And they won 2 out of 14 games. They got 4 points over the last 14 games. It was the year Randy Carlyle said James Reimer was okay, just okay. They were simply terrible. I believe both goalies, Jonathan Bernier and James Reimer, were both injured. So Bernier got hurt in a game against Los Angeles, which was 15 games ago. Reimer came in. I think he got hurt in the same game and played concussed. And then he played concussed the rest of the way, and Bernier came back too soon. But they had nothing. I remember them playing a Detroit Red Wings team, which was basically a farm team, and they had nothing against a farm team. So that's what it reminds me of. It reminded me of 2014 when the bottom fell out. That wasn't the 18-wheeler. We've seen the 18-wheelers with Ron Wilson, but that's what this reminded me of. A team that sort of had everything going for it and just stopped playing.
Yeah, I mean, like this season, Kyle Dubas, I think, put together a team that, I mean, he was clearly building a team for a deep playoff run. That's why he was picking up, Foligno, Nash, a lot of those guys, Thornton, Simmons. But I mean, it doesn't mean anything if you can't get past past the first round. So who shoulders the blame for this? Another Game 7 collapse for the Toronto Leafs.
In a way, I think the blame should be worn by Sheldon Keefe and Kyle Dubas. And I say that sort of, I've been thinking about it for a while. So Kyle Dubas deserves some credit for going out and getting depth players. But then they didn't play them.
Yep.
Right? Like,
injuries had something to do with that. But
they seem to want to force feed Rasmus Sandin into the lineup. And I get the reasons why he should play. Mm-hmm. But they had a perfectly playoff veteran, hardened Ben Hutton, who never saw the light of day.
Right.
And he would have been for Game 7 a perfect replacement for Jake Muzzin, but they didn't play him. Not that would necessarily have made the difference with the effort the team put forward in Game 7, but they made a series of perplexing moves. They're an analytics-based team, and what I think that means in terms of their process is they have a style of play that they want to play, and they will possess the puck and take shots and outproduce in terms of the events of the game the other team. And if you keep doing that enough, you will win more than you will lose. Mm-hmm. I think that recipe works in the regular season. I don't think it works in the playoffs when the other team knows exactly what you're going to do and makes adjustments accordingly.
Right.
And this team didn't make adjustments. They didn't readjust to Montreal's adjustments. They simply believed in their process, believed in their way that this was going to work, and it didn't work. So they need to be a little bit more creative in the playoffs when the other team has figured you out.
So I'm sure you saw on Twitter of Leafs fans essentially on fire. So Mitch Marner was the big name that was being thrown out a lot last night. Still had a terrific, I would say, regular season, playoffs, absence. So do you think the Leafs have to make some sort of, I think of like the Raptors after 2018 when they made the move to get Kawhi Leonard and they shipped fan favorite DeMar DeRozan. Do you think the Leafs have to make some sort of big move this offseason, or like what do you think of, like, even just like a lot of the heat on Marner, in particular, even Matthews as well? What do you think of that?
I don't know exactly who would be available. I mean, Seth Jones is going to become available.
Jack Eichel, maybe. I mean, that's also very expensive.
Eichel, but he comes with injury issues. Those are the guys in the neighborhood. I'm not sure that Kyle Dubas is going to do any of that. I think he's going to come back with roughly the same core and sign the same kind of free agents that he signed before. Maybe not Joe Thornton, but maybe somebody of that ilk, a veteran. Corey Perry could be available to the Leafs next year, right? So, those guys sort of move around at the end of their career, and Toronto's going to be a stop along the way, I'm sure. So I don't. Do they need to do something big? I'm not sure that they need to do something big. They finished first place in the North, and they messed up in the playoffs. I don't think that means great change. I think that means a different approach to next season's playoffs. Right. You can pencil them in right now as a playoff team next year. Like you could just do it, right? They're going to make the playoffs. What do they do next playoffs? I don't think trading Marner, even for Jack Eichel, which is probably the trade that makes the most sense.
Two division rivals.
Changing. Yeah. They've got to come up. If they're going to continue to play a process-oriented game in the playoffs, they've got to come up with a better process and got to find a way to adjust. You can make all the personnel changes you want, but if you're going to stay pig-headed on an approach, it's not going to change anything.
Right. And I mean, like they seem pretty committed to their core, right? There's so many guys the Leafs have to like either resign or figure out how to replace this offseason. Like Zach Hyman is probably a big one. So.
They face an interesting decision. They don't have a great deal of cap space, but they have a few guys that they have to make a decision on. Zach Hyman's probably the biggest, the most important.
Right.
He's earning a shade over $2 million a year. This is going to be his big payday year. Can the Leafs afford to pay him? I think they should, and I think they will. That will mean the end of Freddie Anderson. It could mean the end of Alex Kerfoot, because they've got to bring other players in. Do they bring Alex Galchenyuk back? That's it.
And the Kraken, the expansion draft is going to, obviously have a different dynamic too, and making decisions. So
I think if the Leafs identify which players they're going to have to expose, they might also then identify these. Maybe they trade them before they're lost and they get something back with a lesser player. But then you get into Florida tried to do that, and they basically ruined their franchise for a year because they ended up moving so many players that they were worried about losing that they basically gave Vegas a gift in, I think it was Riley Smith. And
then Trocheck to Carolina.
And there was a whole bunch of mistakes that they worried. Ultimately, you just lose one player.
Right.
But, if that player's got value for you maybe as a draft pick that you can't lose and you create some cap space, I think that's one way to go.
So you weren't alone in predicting that the Leafs would take down the Habs in 5, 6, maybe 4 games. I would say most people were thinking this was going to be, this is going to be the year that the Leafs actually win a first round series. Are we not giving the Habs enough credit for playing that series? That Deneau line was very effective at shutting down Matthews. Carey Price. I mean, I remember you saying at the beginning of the series, The one thing that will matter is Carey Price. And I think everyone saw Carey Price last night. Even his reaction post game, like, is this man human? Like, he had no emotion whatsoever. Stone cold, very good. So are we not giving the Habs enough credit, or was this still just another case of the Leafs just?
Well, I mean, the Habs deserve the credit. I mean, they were certainly the more physical team, and you could watch the Leafs sort of cringe along the boards and avoid hits and give up the puck. So Montreal deserves a great deal of credit for playing the Leafs physically and playing the Leafs defensively. They collapsed around Carey Price, but I really do think the difference was goaltending. I mean, people always said it was Freddie Anderson's fault, but let's be honest, Jack Campbell did not have a great games 5, 6, and 7. And like, he was save for save with Price through 4 games. He was the better goalie through 4 games. But once they started scoring kind of weird goals from, like, Brendan Gallagher's goal last night really should not be a goal.
No.
And that was disheartening. Like, the Leafs, even their overtime in game 6, the Leafs had 13 shots on Carey Price and did nothing. Montreal got 3 shots in overtime and scored on 2 of them.
Right.
So
bad turnovers.
Bad turnovers, but Carey Price stopped 13 shots.
Yeah.
So Montreal wasn't turning over the puck. They couldn't get the puck. Right. So until a Leaf defenseman got so frustrated, he took a poorly timed shot. It ricocheted down. As the only way Montreal was getting into the Toronto end was for Leafs to give it to them, and they gave it to them. And then another bad turnover on the return.
So do you think Jack Campbell is the number 1 goalie of the future for the Leafs, or?
I think the Leafs are going to go with a tandem, and I think Jack will be part of that. I'm not sure who the second goalie will be. Dave Rittich has a chance to be that. I think they want an experienced goalie and go with they'll call it a 1 and 1A, but we could be back to a Bernier and Reimer situation where you have a couple of better than average goalies, but not great goalies.
Potentially either Reimer or no, I'm just joking.
I think they're both available. I would bet that Rittich is probably the most likely candidate. Right.
Okay.
I haven't had a close look at what's available. The goaltending market it's going to heat up. Like, I think Freddie Anderson is going to get his money. My bet is that the Edmonton Oilers will pay.
It's an Oilers. I was thinking exactly the same. Yeah.
So that would maybe Mike comes to the Leafs. I don't know. That might be
the Canadian hockey carousel for.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be definitely interesting to see how they. There's probably we could probably spend the next 2 hours talking about all the different options that the Leafs have. So I'll leave it like this. Last question. I think even before Game 7 happened, Leafs fans were in a dark place. The rest of the hockey world was in a very joking, jovial, very happy. Not happy, I would say. I think a lot of hockey fans are like, this is whatever. It writes itself kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is this the lowest point you think of any collapse the Leafs have ever had? Any point in Leafs fandom? Is this the lowest point?
No, it's just, it was a slow train wreck. Like, it was a slow accident, so you could prepare yourself for the inevitable. I still think 2013 is worse. I think
but there was no expectations for that team squeaked through the playoffs. And, if they were down 3-1 in that series, that'd be like if Montreal.
Right. It was so kaboom.
Right. It was so.
I don't know. There's a lot to choose from to call this one the worst. I still think the 18-wheeler with Ron Wilson and that 2-12 under Randy Carlyle.
Right.
Even though those were not playoff disappointments, those were completely disheartening
moments. Yeah.
Completely disheartening moments in the later history of this franchise.
And I think it's hard for you to remember. I wasn't even thinking about those days until you brought them up. So
yeah.
But
sorry to remind everybody.
Sorry. Oh yeah. It's just, yeah. I think I think we'll have a lot to talk about maybe this offseason as we do every summer, I think, with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So
They create their own content.
yeah, they do. So anything you want to add before we sign off here, Kevin? Or
No, I mean, I do find it interesting. So, like I said, I started in 2006. I had one playoff series to cover the entire time with the home team. That was the 2013 until Austin Matthews gets here. So that's 5 years in a row in the playoffs. The one thing I'll point out, the closest that I can create an equation here, the Boston Bruins won the Stanley Cup in 2011.
mm-hmm.
In the 10 years previous to that, they missed the playoffs 4 times. They were eliminated in the first round 4 times. And then they were eliminated in the second round twice.
Okay.
Then they won the cup. So it's not a straight line to the Stanley Cup. There's disappointments all along the way.
Yeah.
There was nothing in the Bruins playoff history that would suggest, oh, yes, they figured it out. They're going to win the cup. There was nothing but disappointment.
If you also think of the Washington Capitals.
Well, yeah, and
Penguins even after they won the cup. Yeah, well, they were always good.
Penguins were always sort of good, right? Like,
but there was like that gap between their 2 cup runs, I guess.
Yeah, but they were at least making the playoffs and winning playoff rounds. They just weren't going deep. Yeah. Tampa, they won the President's Trophy and lost in 4 games. Yeah. So these things.
Maybe it's not as bad.
The first round is chaos. It really is.
Yeah. Especially
it sort of straightens itself out going into the second and third rounds.
So
the first round is absolute chaos. It's probably the hardest. It's probably the hardest playoff round in any of the professional sports.
Yeah, we're not the Leafs not the only Canadian team that has dealt.
Well, everybody's forgotten the Oilers went 4 straight, right? It's like the Leafs said, "Hold my beer. We can beat that."
Yeah, for sure. All right, Kevin. As always, thank you for taking the time to talk the Leafs in this format. Who knows what this will look like next season? I'm sure we'll do a couple more indoor races over the summer. But hopefully next season, and hopefully by October, there's fans in the stands. We're at a pub watching a game, and we won't be indoor anymore, and we will be out with our friends and family.
So, you're right. There's always next year.
Always next year. Thanks, Neil.
Cheers.